Okay, short little sequence for some knee relief. So you're gonna take a blanket and you're gonna roll it up. Move this back a little bit. You could also use a towel for this. So you're gonna roll it, and you're not gonna roll it all the way. If you're using a towel, you can probably roll it all the way, because we want something that's probably about that thick. And from a kneeling position, you're gonna take that roll and wedge it up into the back of the knee. Fills right into the back of the knee joint. And then depending on how intense that feels, you can have the hands on the ground and work the hips back. And this might be enough pressure. If this is too much on the knees or on the tops of the feet just to be kneeling on the ground, you can put another folded blanket or a towel under your shins with the feet hanging off the back. And you can play with shifting the weight side to side to explore the tension both in the upper part of the lower leg and the lower part of the thigh. You can take this upright. If this is too much on the knees, just drop right back down, be on the hands. Keeping your attention on what you feel. And as you shift from side to side, there might be areas where the leg really resists that the blanket's in there more, and you can kind of pause in those spots. And see if with a little breath and attention, you can encourage that area to be less reactive. And you soften over the blanket. So your knee joint is your thigh bone, your femur, where it connects to your tibia, your shin bone, and your fibula, so the other long bone, the skinnier bone, that's less weight bearing in the lower leg. And so those three bones come together and create the knee joint. And you have muscles and tissue that kind of span across where those bones come together. And so any one of those muscles, any one of those tissues, if they're short or in spasm, they can affect how comfortable the movement of the knee joint is. So you want to kind of look at the muscles below and above. So we're in the hamstrings, the muscles that are above the knee joint at the thigh. And the calf muscles, and then there's some other smaller muscles right in the back of the knee. So after a few minutes of breathing like that, take the blanket out, see what it feels like. It's just way, way more comfortable for me. And my knees weren't even bothering me, but this is just like a whole new set of legs already. And then we'll take a block. We're gonna set up the block so it's above the knee joint at the bottom of the thigh. So it's gonna be on the ground. We're gonna come down onto the forearms. We're gonna put the leg on the block. Your other leg can be on the ground for support. And your foot can even stay on the ground for support if you like. And we're just gonna rock from side to side, kind of rolling over the muscle of the thigh. And then you can shift forward and backward, keeping the weight on the block. take more pressure, the other leg can be crossed over the top of the leg that you're working on. And then play around with bending and extending the knee joint. Play with that at a couple different angles. It's a lot to be on your forearms while you do this, so we'll take a break in child's pose before we move on. Just take a little break. You might notice that your child's pose is more comfortable. And then we'll do the same thing, but we'll just move the block up the thigh, so that instead of being right above the knee, we'll be right below the hip. So same thing. Kind of rock and roll. You're just exploring, like, what's this tissue like? And I can feel when I roll over individual slips of muscle. This one feels like it's pretty jammed up. And then you can do some forward and backward. And the key with all of this stuff is, can you breathe in a way where your body is reminded that you're safe? Because the nervous system is controlling the whole thing. So your muscles are holding on for some reason. And maybe the breath and the attention is enough to remind this tissue that it doesn't have to grip so hard. Just the awareness is enough, like, okay, I see you. And then same thing, we'll bend and extend. Doing a circular motion. I like the block versus using a foam roller because it's going to stay put. And then you can kind of move the tissue around over it rather than kind of just rolling over the tissue. So like it pins the tissue, so then you can kind of slide it versus just moving over the surface of it, which is not a bad thing. But then you can just kneel again if kneeling is comfortable and see how it feels. Definitely got to do the other side. So above the knee to start. Check it out. Forward and backward. My knee actually clicks a little bit while I'm doing this. But then it will feel more smooth after. Breaking child's pose once you get that first spot done. You might notice that your hips actually drop lower in child pose after, because the length of your thigh kind of can determine how far back your hips are able to drop here. And then do the spot right below the hip. Rock forward and backward. Flex and extend through the knee. And see how it feels. And then for a little stretch of the quads, you can take that up against the wall. So you can have a folded blanket or your mat folded over a couple times so you have extra cushion. And I like to work with a couple of blocks. And the way that I get into this is by kneeling next to the wall. My foot's already gonna have to come up onto that bolster a little bit. And then you'll step out away from the wall with the other leg. So one leg kneeling, the other leg is stepped out. Walk my blocks over to frame the other leg, and then slowly dial the foot up the wall. Okay, so I'm working on that post, which does not feel great. I'm gonna move over a little. So your knees up against the wall. You can stay here, hands on the blocks, hips kind of a little bit further away from the wall. Or you can slowly work your hips back towards the wall. If it starts to feel comfortable, you might not even need the blocks. You can just come upright. So your hips will move back towards the wall, opening up this whole front of the thigh. Tailbone is heavy down the back. And you stay long enough where you can start to notice that things are able to relax. They always come out the same way. Walk back over and slide the foot. And then you're gonna do the other side. So again, kneeling next to the wall. Other foot steps out. Frame the foot, the blocks, and then you just slowly, because sometimes the hamstring can cramp up while you do this, especially if you're dehydrated. Slowly turn the foot up. It's too slippery. And then hips can move back towards the wall, if there's room for that. So we're just opening up the whole front of that thigh. Tailbone is down. Belly's relaxed. And if this whole thing is too much on the knee, you can just do a lunge. So instead of doing this lunge at the wall, where the pressure on the knee might be a bit too much, you could just do a regular lunge. And then from that regular lunge, it might be possible to reach back for the foot. You can use a strap too, and just bring that foot in towards the hip. And then see how your knees feel. So yeah, so the knee is the thigh bone, and where the tibia and the fibula, that's where those two the bones of the upper and the lower leg come together. So if you look at the muscles that kind of cross that space, both at the front and the back, you should get some relief. Okay, time for coffee.